gateway to hell.
Before we begin this chilling story, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon and let me know in the comments what you liked about the story.
It started off like any other one of our reckless trips. My sister Anna and I loved to explore. If there was an adventure out there, we'd find it. So when Anna suggested a road trip through Mexico, I was all in. Cancun was fun and all, but we didn't want that touristy shit. We wanted something real. Somewhere untouched. Someplace we could brag about later. It's about Anna. Anna and I have always been on these trips. Every few months, we'd save enough to get out of the States and just go somewhere. This time it was Mexico. I wasn't feeling it at first. Cancun, Tulum, all that tourist crap. But Anna? She was bored of the beaches and wanted something more authentic. That's how she put it anyway. We flew into Cancun but didn't hang around long. Anna had heard about this small, remote town called El Perdido and was obsessed with seeing it. "It's supposed to be haunted or something," she said, like that was a selling point. "There's this abandoned site there, old as hell, like ancient times. Nobody goes there, but I found some blog that said it's worth checking out." A few days into the trip, we ended up in this tiny town I'd never heard of, El Perdido. She found it on some travel blog, one of those places that nobody visits but everyone talks about. Tiny, dusty, stuck in time. She was excited, though. Something about local ruins nearby, some hidden spots the tourists didn't know about. El Perdido was almost empty. It had maybe 20 crumbling houses, and the people were rough. We found a little bar at the edge of town that night, more of a shack. A few locals sat inside, drinking in silence. We grabbed a table and had a couple of beers, and I was just about to convince Anna we should leave the next morning when this old man shuffled up to our table. He had this hunched-over look, his skin wrinkled and leathery from the sun. I couldn't tell if he was 60 or 80. His eyes were dark, though. It was too dark, as if there wasn't anything left behind them. "You girls should not be here," he rasped, his voice like gravel. He had a thick accent, but his English was clear enough. "This is not a place for outsiders." Anna, always up for a challenge, smiled at him. "We're just passing through," she said. "We're looking for some ruins nearby. Do you know anything about them?" The old man's eyes flickered just for a second, but I caught it. "There are no ruins," he said, shaking his head. "Not anymore. But there is something else." Now I was getting uncomfortable. But Anna? She was hooked. She leaned in, curious. "Something else?" He hesitated and glanced around like he didn't want anyone else to hear. Then he leaned in closer. "There is a cave far outside the village. The locals call it La Cueva Que Grita, the Screaming Cave. They say it's cursed, that anyone who enters never returns." He looked at us, his face hard, serious. "You should not go. It is not safe." Anna was fascinated. The more the old man talked, the more she was hooked. She always loved that kind of creepy shit. "You've seen it?" Anna asked, eyes wide. The old man nodded slowly. "When I was young, a group of us went there. Only 2 of us came back. The others... lost." Anna grinned. "Can you show us?" At this, the old man's eyes flashed again, just for a split second. But then he shook his head. "No," he said. "I cannot take you there. It is too dangerous. You do not know what you are asking." Anna, being Anna, leaned forward and put her hand on his arm. Her voice was soft and sweet. "Please," she said. "We just want to see it. Just tell us how to get there." He hesitated again, his gaze flicking between us, and then, as if struggling to hold back, he finally nodded. "If you must go, I will show you the way, but you must be careful. The cave, it calls to people. Once it has you, you do not come back the same." The next morning, we met him just outside the village. He didn't have a car, so we had to drive him up this narrow, winding path into the mountains. The road was barely a road at all, just dirt and rocks, scarcely wide enough for the car. He sat in the back, silent, not giving us directions until we were well past where we should have turned back. Finally, he spoke. "Stop here," he said, his voice low as if he didn't want to be heard. We got out of the car, and he led us the rest of the way on foot. through thick trees and brush, cutting through vines and branches, until finally we reached a clearing. There it was, the cave. It looked like nothing, just a jagged hole in the side of a mountain, dark and empty. "I'll wait here," the old man said, stopping at the edge of the clearing. His eyes followed us as we approached the cave's entrance. I didn't want to go in. I didn't even want to be near it. But Anna was already inside, calling me to follow her. "You coming or what?" she shouted, her voice echoing back. When I stepped into the cave, my stomach knotted up in a way I couldn't explain. The air inside was cold and damp and smelled like wet stone. My flashlight barely cut through the thick darkness, and the deeper we went, the louder this strange, distant sound became. It was like wind at first, but then it turned into something else, something like screaming. Anna didn't seem fazed by the noise. She walked ahead of me, almost skipping, her flashlight bouncing off the cave walls. The sound grew louder with each step, sharp and piercing, like it was coming from the walls themselves. I wanted to turn back, but Anna would call out from ahead whenever I hesitated. "Don't be a baby," she said, her voice echoing. Then her voice changed. It got lower, quieter. "Come closer, don't run." That's when I noticed something was wrong with her. She wasn't curious anymore. She was different. Her voice was almost too playful, but in a way that made my skin crawl. She turned to me, grinning in the dim light. "You'll like it here, Jess. Don't run. Stay with me." I turned to look at her, and my blood went cold. She wasn't alone. Something was standing before her, a shadow, tall and thin, with eyes like burning coals. It whispered to her, its voice like a broken wind chime. "Come closer," it said, and Anna moved as if in a trance. I screamed for her and grabbed her arm, but it was like she couldn't even feel me. Her face was pale, eyes wide, locked on the thing before her. She took another step forward, and that's when I saw it. The old man. He was standing behind the shadow, grinning. His face had changed, twisted, like it was melting off his skull. His eyes, once dark and dead, now burned with the same fire as the thing in front of us. He wasn't there to protect us. He never was. He'd brought us here. I turned to run, but my feet, they felt heavy, like something was grabbing them, pulling me down. I tried to move, but each step was harder than the last. My legs felt like they were sinking into the ground, like something was wrapping around them, holding me back. I could feel fingers, cold and bony, wrapping around my ankles. I screamed for Anna. She didn't even flinch. She walked deeper into the cave, her laugh echoing back at me. "Don't leave, Jess. It's better in here. You'll love it. Come on." I was panicking now, my heart slamming against my chest. I kept trying to run, but whatever was holding me was dragging me down. I could feel them, hands, hundreds of them, pulling at my legs, clawing at my feet. And then sharp pain, biting. Something was biting me. I stumbled, nearly falling, but I forced myself forward, yanking my feet out of their grip. I didn't stop until I could see the sunlight. The moment I burst out of the cave, I collapsed, gasping for air, my body shaking with terror. But the pain, it didn't stop. My feet burned. When I looked down, I saw them. Handprints, black, charred marks, wrapped around my ankles, like I'd been grabbed by something, and worse, bite marks. Human teeth marks, bleeding, fresh. I could barely process it. I felt like I was going to pass out, but I knew I had to get away. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the village. My legs felt like they were on fire, but I ran the whole way and didn't stop until I reached the police station. I must have looked crazy, talking about the cave, the old man, and Anna. But the police listened, at least for a little while. They searched the cave, the village, and the area around it, but they found nothing. No cave, no Anna. When I told them about the old man, they looked confused. "There's no one like that here," they said. "No old man in the bar, no one who looks like that." It was as if he had never been real. I couldn't let it go. I had to know who that old man was. I started asking questions and talking to the few locals who would talk to me. Finally, an old grandma told me the truth. The stories had been passed down through generations. She had heard it from her grandfather, who had heard it from their grandfather before them. The old man, he was dead. Years ago, he practiced wicked magic and dark spells. He would perform evil rituals and kill innocent animals as part of his twisted ceremonies. The breaking point came when he kidnapped and sacrificed an infant. That was when the villagers had enough. They dragged him to the mountains and burned him alive. But Anna is still out there. I can feel it. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear her voice, soft and teasing, calling me back. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still feel that burning pain in my feet. The handprints, the bite marks, they're still there, faint but real. I know what's waiting for me if I go back, and I know I can never save Anna.